evening and Happy New Year. I'm Andrew Whitman in tonight for Richard French. Tonight we kick off a new year and say good riddance to 2020, a year that we are happy to put in the rearview mirror. 2020 saw a deadly pandemic that's killed more than 340,000 Americans and counting, but we now have a vaccine and hope as the calendar turns to 2021. Once the outbreak is under control, the country will finally be able to go back to something approaching normal, but what will the new normal look like and how fast will we get there? Will people go back to their offices, movie theaters, travel, and do all the things we used to do? 2021 will also see the inauguration of a new president as Joe Biden takes the oath of office on January 20th and Donald Trump packs up and says goodbye to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But will Trumpism leave with Trump? Will his party work with President Biden or will it obstruct him and his agenda? We should get part of that answer on Tuesday when the runoff elections in Georgia determine which of these men will run the U.S. Senate and whether the Senate majority will work with or against President Joe Biden. Tonight, we will attempt to answer all of those questions and more as we say hello to 2021 and good riddance to 2020. Let's start by introducing our panel for tonight. Chris Shays is a former Republican congressman from Connecticut. Michael Starr Hopkins is a Democratic strategist who served on the presidential campaigns of both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year to you both.
Happy New Year.
We've been doing these New Year's shows for a while, and it's rare that you get one news story over New Year's that you know will impact the entire course of the new year. We had impeachment last year, but we knew that was predestined to fail. This year, we actually have two of those stories, the vaccine and its rollout, which we'll focus on in our next segment. And right now, we have Georgia in control of the Senate. Should the Democrats win both runoffs and Democrats will win the Senate majority, obviously you'll be looking at a very different Washington in 2021. But for our purposes tonight, let's assume at least one Republican wins in the Peach State and the GOP keeps control of the Senate. Here's what Mitch McConnell said a decade ago about his approach to the last Democratic president.
Our top political priority over the next 2 years should be to deny President Obama a second term.
Chris, will Mitch McConnell use the same approach when dealing with President Joe Biden, assuming Republicans control the Senate?
I think yes, but a little more tempered. I think they both respect each other, and Mitch McConnell has an incredible opportunity to have been the tough guy who can kind of close his career by getting some things done, which means he'll have to compromise with this president. So I'm hopeful that there'll be a better relationship.
Michael, you're not just looking at Mitch McConnell in the U.S. Senate here. You're also going to have any number of potential Republican presidential candidates for 2024 who are looking to make their mark. Does that change the metric in terms of Republican cooperation with President Biden?
You know, I think obviously we're now at a point where the election cycle never ends. And when you talk about people like Josh Hawley objecting to the vote counting on January 6th and making that announcement now, what it shows to me is that Republicans aren't willing to work with Biden moving forward. And we're going to be in the same type of stalemate. So it's going to take some real unique and also, I think, courageous Republicans to come across the aisle and work with Democrats. And it's going to take some Democrats to be willing to reach across the aisle and find common ground. But I think Americans are going to demand it come 2021.
Michael, do you think that goes as far as McConnell went with President Obama not approving a Supreme Court nominee or not approving, judges? They left a lot of vacant judges at the end of the Obama administration. Will it be to that depth, do you think?
I certainly hope not. I do think the fact that Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell have a long relationship and a long history of working together is going to be helpful, not just for the parties, but for the country as a whole. But at the end of the day, Mitch McConnell is a political creature, and he has proven that power is what he craves more than anything else.
Chris, your response?
Well, first of all, I agree with a number of things Michael said, but he does love power and he uses it quite effectively. But he also is getting older and he's got 6 years. I see him responding to the fact that most members are not satisfied with being in Congress right now because they're not getting anything done. And everyone who was elected wants to get some things done. So I see Michael's point about the American people wanting some accomplishments as kind of modifying the partisanship a bit. I see the relationship between Biden and the president as being President Biden as being a helpful aspect to this as well. So I'm pretty hopeful, frankly.
If there's one particular area of potential hope, Chris, you would think it would be COVID aid, more checks, more help to the people, and to help the economy recover. President Trump certainly handed Democrats a pretty big hammer on this. Do you think that'll be enough to get Republicans to go for more assistance?
I do, because the president will be in the background preventing President Biden from having a honeymoon, but he won't be in office, and that he's going to be surprised with the fact that he won't be as relevant, even though he thinks he is.
Michael, there's been some opposition, certainly Republicans in the House and in the Senate side, about the size of relief bills, those $2,000 checks. Do you think that that's an area where there can be agreement, COVID relief?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because Trump, in some ways, has divided the Republican Party. There's the Trump populism wing of the party, and then there's kind of the old school deficit hawk wing of the Republican Party. And now those sides are at odds. You're seeing it in the fact that Senator Loeffler and Senator Perdue were first against having a stimulus package, and now they're for it. You're seeing it with senators like Josh Hawley combined with Senator Sanders out of Vermont and come together and say that $2,000 is the amount. I think that what we're going to see in 2021 is a new joining together of kind of the populist wing of the Democratic Party and the populist wing of the Republican Party.
So, Michael, give me some ideas of where there might be areas of agreement or issues or topics where even if the GOP, is in full resistance mode, some progress can be made. Every week of the Trump administration was infrastructure week. Can we get a deal done on infrastructure?
I actually think we can get a deal done on infrastructure because if for nothing else, so many Americans are hurting and need jobs, and an infrastructure bill would be the easiest way to get people back to work, get infrastructure in the country, which is desperately needed to be rebuilt, and give us a little hope. I think infrastructure is there. I think we all know that we need to make some changes to Obamacare, not throw the whole thing out, but make some changes so that it works better. And I think when it comes to the VA, an area where we all agree we need to make improvements, I think that's something, those are three areas where Republicans and Democrats can all come together and say, we can do better.
Chris, criminal justice reform and police reforms in particular, especially where communities of color are impacted, were a huge story, obviously, in 2020. Trump has opened the door a little bit when it comes to criminal reforms, but there has been political intransigence when it comes to some other efforts. The Black Lives Matter movement was made something of a boogeyman by a lot of Republicans across 2020. Is there an opportunity for progress on either of those topics in 2021?
I agree with the areas that Michael's pointed out. I think there's opportunity in a lot of areas. First off, with the pandemic, our members of Congress want to save lives and they want to get on with it. And I think that with a president who starts to have a federal focus to it and just doesn't depend on the states to deal with it in an unorganized way, I think there will be some unity there, even though right now you wouldn't think that. But I mean, my gosh, we're approaching 350,000 deaths. That's got to force members to find common ground. And obviously with infrastructure and so on. I think the area that's going to be kind of interesting as well is foreign affairs. If the president wants to have a better relationship with Iran, he can do a lot, but Congress is not going to vote for any treaty that gives Iran some status. So it's going to be, I think, a very interesting and frankly, hopeful year. Michael, I just say, congratulations for the work you did with Obama. But when President Obama became president, he set up a crew from Chicago that he was comfortable with, but they were kind of partisan in nature because in Chicago you don't have to work with Republicans. This president is, in my judgment, learned a lesson about that. It's going to make sure that he has some people that can reach out to the Republicans. And may I add one other point? Having served in Congress, whenever a president called you up, your office was like all of a sudden, my God, the president's on the phone, and it was everything stopped. and you went into your office and your chief of staff picked up the phone and listened to the conversation. And you, as a congressman, are thinking the most important person in the world, candidly, wants to spend time talking to me. So don't underestimate what this president can do. He can invite people to Camp David. He can invite them to the White House, and they'll come and they'll enjoy his company, and they'll find some common ground. I really think so.
Michael, in response to that, my question in response to that, would those Republicans have the political flexibility, the maneuverability to actually be able to do a deal with the president?
Well, that's going to be the hardest part for Republicans. So much money is made off of fundraising, demagoguing Democrats, and Democrats also do the same when it comes to fundraising digitally. But we don't have the same type of apparatus when it comes to some of the right-wing media and some of the echo chambers. And so I think what's really going to be tough is I think there are some Republicans with goodwill who want to reach across the aisle and work with Democrats, but they're scared of taking that hit. They're scared of not getting the cover that they need and ending up, being a talking point on Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity or one of the other kind of kooks that is driving a lot of the party right now.
Final question in this segment. We certainly had a lot of abnormalities during the Trump presidency. His disregard of presidential norms, from hiding his tax returns to hosting campaign events at the White House, to the use of his hotels by foreign governments, refusal to recognize congressional subpoenas. I can keep this list going for the rest of the hour. We're not hearing any talk really from Biden about reversing these, other than Biden himself isn't going to do those things, but that's not going to stop a future president from ignoring these same norms down the road. Chris, and then Michael, is this a subject that needs more attention than it's getting? And are you optimistic that we can actually codify some of these norms?
Well, it needs more attention. It doesn't need more attention right now. Become president, get moving with your first 100 days. But Joe Biden is an incredibly respectful man of what was, and he wants to return to what was in terms of the camaraderie between Republicans and Democrats. Let me just say, I have to say it. What this president has done has been so destructive in so many ways. And if, in fact, future presidents think they can do the same thing, they're fools. But, having a convention basically at the White House, giving speeches in the White House with political messages on electric billboards and so on. You could just go down the list. I don't think Joe Biden wants anything to do with that. And I think that it will reflect badly in the future on President Trump.
Which is well and good, but Michael, unless you codify those norms, then a future president who's not as well behaved as Joe Biden might go right back to the Trump playbook.
Exactly. After Nixon, we saw Congress go back and change the election laws and do things to strengthen the institutions that had been weakened. And I think that's exactly what's going to have to happen here. It may end up being that we're going to need some sort of blue ribbon commission that can look into and investigate all of the ills that happened over the last 4 years. But we've got to be able to at least show the American people that, one, we're holding people accountable, and two, that moving forward, we never let this happen again. Because at the end of the day, laws are a word, or a group of words on a piece of paper. And if we don't follow them, if we don't honor them and give them respect, then they mean absolutely nothing. And that's what this president has taught us.
Well said, Michael. Well said.
That brings to a close on this point of agreement. That brings to a close the first RFL segment of 2021. Up next, our second segment of the year. The vaccine is here, even though the rollout has been really slow. After the break, the panel returns. We're going to look at how the shots could impact how we live our lives in the new year.